Hey Mark, how's it going? How is everybody going? Everybody say hi when you come in. Let me know that you're here. So, hi Tom. I'm doing this thing right now where I'm trying to pick things I don't normally play over just to kind of force myself to stretch a little bit. So that was actually, and I'll tell you guys what the. Let me close all of these things here. The track that I was just playing over is from another channel. I kind of like playing over other people's stuff. Let me turn that sucker off for a second. And I will post that. Oh, actually, this is the one I need. I'll post that link for that. It's a Latin jazz thing in C minor. I literally just put backing track, and that was like the first thing that came up. And I liked it. So and that's like one of those things that I really, I really highly advise you guys do, is just force yourself to play things you're not comfortable with. You know, not necessarily in public. Here's the link there. And then, actually, you know what I'm going to do is, watch my mouse die in the middle of all of this. And then I'm also going to put it in the bottom thing here. I have to like open the video up to do this, but just so I don't forget what I got here. Okay. So I got that going on. All right. I'm going to play like one more thing. Tom. So that was a little quick to start off my Saturday morning. How about something bluesy? Because I'm not feeling the jazz. Let's do this. Let's put in Freddie King backing track. I had someone ask me for a going down transcription, and I'm probably going to do like a quick licks version of this. It's always a fun song. Man, this is obnoxious. Can you guys hear the track? Let's try a different one. That one's really obnoxious. When you make a backing track, try to put the rhythm guitars where the lead guitar is going to actually reside. Wow! Let's just not do that. Sorry, guys. I had a whole idea I was going to do with this, but let's just play some bluesy. And that's from Quist backing tracks. All right. Okay, so Tom, ever do lead tracks to inspire rhythm players? Like, you mean like come up with like a melody or something like that that people need to play rhythm over? Um, Never really thought about it that way. I've thought about putting together like complete arrangements of tunes where they have to, minus the rhythm guitar part. And then they have to actually put something in there. That was going to be one of my assignments for the conservatory this year, was to basically give them a finished track and be like, hey, be a session player. Like, what are you going to do in the space available? That I hadn't really, with the way that the school year has gone with remote teaching and all this other stuff, I really haven't delved into it that much. I've had other things. I kind of realized that everybody needed to learn how to play rhythm guitar a little bit better. And then we're also going to be doing some stuff on flat picking and bluegrass, which may end up here on this channel. And the reason, I teach a lot of these styles not because anybody really specifically needs to learn all these styles to be able to play these styles on a gig, as much as these styles all have collateral benefit to your overall musicianship. The funk stuff is kind of the ultimate expression of just straight 16th note subdivision. Whether you're playing like the funky rhythm stuff like that, right, or doing like single note like bubble parts. But then that stuff all kind of trains your body to feel the beat, the pulse of that beat. Remember, we talked about the beat is just, on the beat, that's each one of those clicks of the metronome. We talk about the pulse, we're talking about all of those beats in context at a tempo. And the subdivision are the smaller parts we divide that pulse up into. And when we're talking about rhythm guitar, we're really forcing it to be more like a drummer, where you're having to like feel the quarter note and whatever the basic subdivision of the tune is. You really have to train this. But the nice thing is that once you get that, you remember that feel of how it is to make this stuff work rhythm guitar wise. It makes your lead playing a lot better too. They always talk about the fact that in the 80s we're really fixated on electric guitar players that were soloists and flashy guys like Eddie Van Halen or Joe Satriani or Steve Vai or any of those technical guys. And the really, really good lead players also were really good rhythm players. We just didn't really pay any attention to that, or they played music where we really didn't hear it. Van Halen was probably the best example of a person that was really revered for his lead playing, but really if you listen to how he plays rhythm guitar, especially on the earlier Van Halen records, he's the main reason why that band has any kind of groove or swing. Like the rhythm sections kind of, I don't know, they're not as funky as he is. Like he kind of makes it all happen and feel good. But that's a thing for another story. But anyway, so you have these like collateral benefits from learning each of these things, right? I always like the idea of working on bluegrass. I've actually got this Russ Barenberg book here that I'm using right now. But I like a lot of the Andy Wood videos that he's been doing lately, where he talks about like his picking techniques, especially where he talks about like cross picking. Because Andy Wood was one of those guys. He was a bluegrass guitarist, like I guess a championship bluegrass guy. And he was also a great mandolin player who came into electric guitar playing kind of later on in life. But because he had played those instruments for so long at such a high level, when he came to guitar, his right hand picking was dialed in there. So his channel is really good if you really want to hear somebody talk about how to physically pick the instrument and how to play the guitar in a way that makes sense. And he was not someone who went to music school. He knows a lot. But he grew up listening to records and playing bluegrass festivals, it sounds like, with his father and his grandfather. And he comes from that kind of family where he kind of came to music more in a practical way. And it's really kind of cool to hear how he talks about how his really, really bulletproof and impressive technique developed over time in a more organic way. Okay, so Tom says, lead tracks to inspire rhythm players, a melody seeking a harmony. We do that a lot with my jazz students, where we'll have a melody, like we'll have a note, and it's like, well, how many how many chords can fit this note, right? So we'll talk about reharmonizing a melody per se. So like that A, that could be the root of an A chord, A major. It could be the third of an F major 7 chord or an F dominant chord. It could also be the third of an F sharp minor chord. It could be the 7th of a B7 chord. It could be the major 7 of a B flat major 7 chord. All right, so you get used to this idea that the melody is the important thing really, when it comes to coming up with the harmony and everything else, because you can't really, as far as I understand it, you can copyright a melody, you can't copyright the harmony of a song. And typically when jazz musicians play, they'll take a standard melody and they'll reharmonize it however they want to. All right, and it's kind of a neat exercise, even if you're not a jazz player. I had a student he's 16 years old and he's wanting to go to music school when he graduates high school as a composition major. But we took, I believe, Happy Birthday and reharmonized it. I just gave him all of the options for all of these chords, and he came up with a pretty cool but really messed up reharmonization of Happy Birthday. It's really kind of a cool exercise to do, because you really start looking at music pretty differently. So, going through the... Me too. This not practicing a bunch of tunes in the same genre, and the discipline to focus is it's always been a thing for me. I remember right now everyone's having the whole, hey, this was the last normal weekend before everything shut down conversation. And it was funny because when we all went into the shutdown, you guys hear the dogs? Those aren't my dogs, it's someone else's dogs. For the first month or so, like every professional musician I spoke to was like, this sucks, I'm not making any money, but I'm able to practice anything I want right now. And everybody had these like practice plans laid out. It's like, I don't have to practice for a gig, I don't have to practice to teach, I don't have to, because typically once you get to a certain point as a working player, the majority of your practice time is spent making sure that you can play the stuff you need to play on gigs and not practicing the stuff that's fun for you, or just stuff that in general you think you should work on. So like I had this whole idea that I was going to do, but basically I was going to learn over the course of a couple months, 10 new jazz standards. I was going to put together 10 bluegrass tunes. I was going to tune up all the rock tunes, because a lot of the rock tunes I play on gigs, I've learned over the years kind of in a haphazard way. Either someone showed me something on stage, or I've had to learn something the day of a gig or whatever. So I was going to go through and like really learn everything 100% right. And I had this, and it lasted about 3 weeks, and it was really cool. But for me, like that's, I have multiple attention spans, and this becomes part of this conversation where I know not to practice anything longer than 30 or 40 minutes at a time. And if I need to practice 4 or 5 hours in a day, I'll break it up however I need to. I also know that after 2 or 3 weeks, I probably should try something different. And that's the thing, is you kind of strategize how you're going to use your time, because what we typically do is this thing where you just say, I'm going to work on this stuff. I'm going to do the Steve Vai 10-hour a day practice thing, and I'm going to get really good. And then the problem is that you can never really maintain that ideal for various reasons. I'm 50 years old. I've got a wife, 2 kids, 2 dogs, a house, a mortgage. I teach. I've got private students. I teach at the conservatory. I play. It's like everyone's got their life that you have to fit your practice time and routine into. And the biggest part of my job as a teacher for adults, and the majority of my private students are adults through Zoom or whatever. I don't teach very many kids anymore outside of my conservatory. But the hardest thing is it's almost like I'm a therapist or a frustration management counselor, because the reality is everybody has what they want to do. As an adult, you get used to this thing that, hey, at my real job, you know, I go through a training thing for 3 days and I know how to do something. So guitar should be the same thing. And the reality is that guitar is an art and a sport. All right, it's two things. It's more than that. But there's the artistic part that you want to be creative with, but the athletic part of it, it's the training of your motor skills, and it's the training of your brain, because you want to train your brain to hear music. You want to train your brain to hear the music so vividly that your hands physically can do it. And then you have to be able to train the technique so that you can actually execute the things that you hear decently. And getting an adult to understand that anything you do is going to take weeks and months and years it's difficult sometimes, right? Because this is for most of you guys that are watching this isn't your job. It's not your school. This is supposed to be a leisure time activity. It shouldn't be that much of a challenge to do. You want to enjoy it. But you know, you kind of have to realize that anytime you do something like this, you're looking at a long-term investment of energy, in that the processes take a long time, because you're training new habits. You're wiring up neurons in your brain. You're doing all of these things that, like, when you teach a baby how to walk or talk, or you know, a slightly older kid how to ride a bike, or throw a ball, or drive a car, you know, any of those things that we do that have to be done without consciously thinking about it, it just takes time. So the management of what you're going to work on, how long you're going to work on, and how frustrated you're going to allow yourself to get over this stuff, that's almost the secret art to being successful as a musician when you're not 16 years old. When you're a kid, you have other issues, but you also have a lot more time. And while your issues as a teenager seem huge and catastrophic to you at the time, they're different than as a kid. And that's one of the reasons why it's fun to teach at the conservatory, is because sometimes the kids don't know that it needs to take a long time to get good at something, or that they're not supposed to be, you know, perfect within a week, you know. Anyway, but that's, you know, just kind of something to think about in terms of, like, when you work on this stuff, is, you know, be patient with yourself. I have people come into lessons, especially new students, and they're like, oh, you're going to be mad at me, I didn't get this all finished. And I'm like, well, no, because, you know, that's just not how this whole thing works. So, okay, should we get into some licks? I've gone 20 minutes, I haven't shown you guys anything. I'm gonna start with something, some of the money stuff that I know people always like. Oh, you're kidding me. Why is this thing not charging? All right. I'm gonna have to actually show you this. Okay, my iPad is not being my friend here, so let me throw my iPad on the charger. The best part about doing this live thing is that I've literally got my phone is blowing up right now. And, and one of them is my boss at the conservatory. Watch this. This is going to be incredibly rude, and I would totally shut off anyone else who did this to me, but literally both days. Okay, dealt with. All right. Anyway, so let's talk about some of my favorite stuff, which are the pedal steel things that people seem to enjoy the most. I'm even gonna cheat and throw the compressor on. Let's switch cameras. Okay. So the deal with a lot of these pedal steel licks, so I can do this so I'm not getting the washout here, is that you typically have one note that stays the same, and the other notes that bend to another note. So if we're talking about, like, if I'm playing an A, all right, the idea here is going to be, I'm going to take one chord tone, which is going to be the 5th of A, which is your 12th fret on the first string. I'm going to play with my pinky, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ring finger and I'm going to bend a whole step up on the second string from the 12th fret up to the note that would normally be on the 14th fret. And together, that's C sharp and E, which is the third and the fifth of an A chord, right? All right, now notice when I do the bend with the third finger, the other fingers are on the string behind it, and they're holding that bend. All right. Same thing if I wanted to do an E in this position. I'm thinking about this E major pentatonic lick. All right. And what I'm doing is I'm barring the first two strings of the 12th fret, which gives us the root and the fifth, and then I'm bending my second, which is the 11th fret on the third string, up a whole step, so it's going to the G sharp. Right? And all of that stuff basically gives you an E major chord right there. That's going to be A. That's E. Now, those bends, you can move them around. Like if I wanted to do this in E, I would move it down here. So I've got the root is actually the first finger that we're not playing. So the third finger bends the 7th fret up a whole step, and then the pinky plays the 7th fret on the first string. And that's basically what you're doing there. But because the string that we're on the second and third strings now, I can also get the root on the first string. All right, if I want to make that a dominant 7th chord, like say I'm playing an E blues, and it's going to go to the A chord. All right, a lot of times we talk about playing the dominant 7 a little harder in the 4th measure of a 12-bar blues. I can hit the note there. So what I did that oblique bend, and then still keeping that bend down there. Man, I'm sorry about the lights in the camera today. And then that note is actually the 10th fret on the first string, which is D, which is the minor 7, which makes this a dominant 7 chord. Kind of a cool chord voicing here is this idea that I've got the 3rd, 5th, and instead of the root, like when I played this triad right there, 3rd, 5th, minor 7. Right, a lot of times we'll play for a blues, like an introduction or a turnaround. That's the 5 and the 7. Here's the 3rd. So I can always go and then that would actually resolve into the A chord or the A7 chord right there if we're going into the 5th bar of an E blues. All right, and then that oblique bend idea, that's the same thing there too. Yeah, there's a certain amount of finger strength in there, but I think part of that is not so much finger strength as much as you're really doing bends either from behind the wrist, like if I do it from this angle, right, and it's a matter of like twisting the forearm and not trying to push with the fingers, and then also making sure that the fingers keep this arch, right, because if this is a strong arch right here, it's going to transmit all of that force directly to the string, whereas if you're kind of letting it flap around there, you know, especially if you let it collapse backwards, what's going to happen is that some of that force that you're trying to project onto the string gets dispersed by, you know, basically not being focused directly on the point of the finger. Right, so even like I can do that one there where it's the 11th fret on both strings, and I'm bending both strings to make a 6th there, right? And the notes, the target notes, are going to be the root and the major 3rd. Right, and what's happening there is if you watch it from this angle, and if you watch it from this angle, you see the fingers don't actually give you any strength at all. they're just providing some rigidity to bring all of the force that you're focusing from the forearm onto the string. Right there, I went from the major chord. All right, and then I bend these guys up into these two notes. Now the thing is, when you do this bend here, you both those strings at the same time, it just so happens that you only bend a half string on the half step on the first string or one fret, and a whole step on the second string. All right, and it's kind of cool. I'm doing this totally out of tune right now. I probably should tune. Right, so I can take the idea that we were doing here, where I'm basically in that last bar of a blues, or any place where I'm trying to go from the E7 chord to an A. I can do the bend. All right, and then actually resolve it to the A chord. So I'm going up to the 3rd and the 5 of the E7 chord, up to the 7 and the 9. And when you relax that, it's actually part of that A triad right there. Right, so, right, this little bit here, it's kind of funny. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but this is a little part of the fretboard that I love using for transitioning at that point of a blues, because what happens is that you can play the 6th, right, from E7 down to the A pretty good, but then you can also fill it out as a triad. So I got E major, then this becomes D major, because it's, even though this is the 2nd and the 7th, or the 9th and the 7th, and that's the 11th, it's really just a D major triad. You can resolve there to the A, or I'll use it as a passing phrase where I go, all right, where basically it's still all E7 ideas, or E mixolydian. Right, and then at this point, you know, like we play the E9 chord right here, right, I can slide that finger up and down like that, and what's going on there is that I'm taking this 9th chord, and the notes here are 5, 9, and minor 7. You slide it up a whole step, and that gives you 13 root, and root 13, 3, and then root. So they're all chord tones. They all make sense against the E. So if we take all of these triads, and if you really look at what these triads are, E7, D7, C sharp minor, B minor, we're just harmonizing that E mixolydian scale. All right, my stolen Joe Satriani lick from, let's see. Was that Surfing with the Alien? Or Satch Boogie, actually. He does this thing here where he plays those notes we were talking about. Man, this is driving me nuts with this stupid camera here. Let me switch cameras. Hopefully you guys can see this. It's not quite as close up. Can I bring you closer? Yes, I can bring you closer. All right, hopefully this is still viable. So what we have there is basically you're taking this stack of notes, these 3 notes, and you're playing the first 2 strings and then the 2nd and 3rd strings. And that gives you the kind of cool little harmonized melody. And then bring it into the E7. If I was going to play over, let me shut off my iPad is for some reason. Actually, let me do an A7 one because it'll. Let's do B7. I'll kind of show you how I would use this. Chicago Blues and B. This works. Okay, so in B blues right here, this is where we're gonna play our pentatonic scale, but the 4 chord is E. So I'm able to use this idea, just move it down chromatically, and then into the B chord. Right. One of those things I do way too much, but I really enjoy doing. So let me play a little bit of this. And if you guys see anything that you like, let me know and I'll dig it out for you. 1, 2, 1. Sorry about that. Everyone loves that one. Alright. So let's talk about weird stuff there. I've done this one in the past, where like with the B chord here, right? And the idea is that you can take any chord shape, which makes this really easy, and just move it down and up. Or start a half step below and slide into it. Right? We always have this movement over a bar chord where you can go the chord, and then you can play the 4 chord with the root of the 1 chord in the bass. And it becomes like a suspension sound. Right. A lot of times in a like in a Chicago blues, one guy can do this, and the top part can go right. You got that kind of thing that you can do instead of everybody playing the same part. I'm just taking the E, I'm sorry, the B chord, which is the 1 chord in this B blues, collapsing it so that's actually an E triad, and then back and forth. And that doesn't take you out of the key or change the chords so much as just give you a little bit of movement within the universe of that B chord. All right. But using that E chord as something to bounce the licks against is really helpful. So I'm playing the first 2 notes of that B. There's the E chord. All right. And you've got all of that B chord to... So, okay. When I was playing that, say we've got the 4 chord is an E chord. Right. A lot of times we talk about 6ths on the first 2 strings, but I like to play them on the 2nd and 4th strings as well. Right. So I'm sliding up, and this is part of this E chord here. That's the 5 and that's the 3. And then I've got this note right here, which is the 5th. It happens to be on the 7th fret on the 1st string. Slide it down chromatically. And then this is the 3rd and the root out of like E major or E7 right there. That's the C shape from the cage. All right, and you can take this and slide it down the same way you did when we started off talking about the pedal steel licks and where those notes come from. All right, so this idea, we could go, and then, I don't like that as much, but you do have that over the. Now, you guys know that Matus, guy that plays the Sur guitars that was really popular on Instagram for a little bit. I stole this from one of his videos. He talks about like how he does this articulation where like even if he's playing this idea, he'll always like do this half step above kind of trill. All right. And I realized that if I'm playing over the 4 chord, I can do that on the first 2 strings. Right, and what it gives me is the flat 5 and the minor 3rd of the minor pentatonic or blues scale, which is kind of a cool sound. So a lot of times over the 4 chord, when it switches there, and then I can resolve that back into the 1, and that actually helps. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. Coffee break. And also if you guys have questions or comments. Doing these live streams are kind of weird sometimes because there are days where there's a ton of people on and I do it. And then there are days where there's very few people on when I originally call it broadcast or stream. But then, like, over the rest of the week, I'll get, like, 60 or 70 people or 100 or 200 people watching it all the way through. So I'm the kind of a person that, like, thrives off of the interaction between, like, when you guys ask questions or make comments or even tell dumb jokes. And it gets weird sometimes because I'm trying to, it's hard to gauge, like, have I given you something useful? Do you guys like this or not? Anyway, so guitar streamers insecurity. It's funny the Andy Wood thing. I really, for my entire life, I've really struggled with my right hand picking, and like I'm this many years old, and I'm still kind of working on it. I talk about the bluegrass thing. I've got this. See if I can. Let's see. All right. I just started working on that one this week, and probably shouldn't be playing it for you guys. But the reality is that this is part of my process is finding things like that I kind of suck at. All right. So the thing with the bluegrass stuff is that we work on the alternate picking, but we also have to spend a lot of time on cross picking. When we talk about cross picking, we're talking about the idea that you're having to basically, it's almost like arpeggiating a chord or playing across multiple strings one note at a time. I mentioned earlier I've been watching these Andy Wood videos, and he's got one, might be kind of recent, And he talks about, and literally a lot of it is just about cross picking, and he talks about like how he would play with Doc Watson albums and things like that. All right, and the basic cross picking idea is that, like, say I'm playing the B here on the 3rd string, 4th fret, and then open B on the 2nd string, and then the E string open on the 1st string. So it's almost like a banjo roll. All right, that sort of deal. But you're doing it just with a pick, right? And it presents you with this really unique issue or challenge, which is when you pick 3 notes, you go down, up, down, and then have to start on the next string, up, down, up. And he does this demonstration where he talks about, like, you pick down, and then you have to go around and up on the next one, and then down. Then you have to come back and go up, down, up. All right, so you have like all of these combinations where you're picking outside the 2 strings, down, up, and then inside, that's up, down, and then you're having to skip up, and then you have to skip over to get down here, and then up, right? All right, so it takes a little bit of getting used to this idea that your pick just can't move in this perfectly flat plane. The Cracking the Code guy, Troy Grady, has all of these lessons on pick slanting. I'm sitting here dropping the names of all these other great channels, but the reality is that they're all really good information. Right. So when I work on this stuff, and that that's called Liberty out of that Russ Barron book. I'll link that later. Right. Trying to do the cross picking thing and keep my hand relaxed is kind of a challenge. It's kind of hard for me. All right, especially at any kind of speed. I'm also playing on a Telecaster with 10s on it, so it's going to feel kind of different. But the struggle there really makes a difference in how I'm able to play the other stuff that I like or need to play. Right, the right hand mechanics as they sharpen. You know, my rhythm guitar playing gets better, my improvising gets better. But that simple exercise that Andy Wood gives, which is down, up, down. So we're playing these 3 strings, down, up, down, up, down, up. If you notice that it's just a minimum amount of movement. Let's try this again. Maybe you can kind of see this. Right. He says play along with recordings. I would need to put on a metronome. There's various ways we could do this. One of them is just put on a metronome. Make sure that we're keeping it in time. So I'm on 85 right now, which is a little quick for this sort of thing, so I'm doing these as 8th notes. And just trying to keep it nice and even. And you notice that as soon as I start doubling the speed up to do the 16th notes at this tempo, my hand starts getting kind of nutty. All right, if I was to slow it down, there's 62. A little bit more manageable. And you want to get this stuff so that you're totally relaxed, that you're not. And he would say you do things like you play like ska. That wasn't real helpful, but because once you master this, a lot of the other stuff is a lot easier. All right, but it's a matter of getting those hands to move. So that's one of those things that I'm working on. Right, doing it as one of those pieces of music that's the very first piece of that Russ Barrenberg book. You know, it's got combinations of the alternate picking, which has its own challenges. That sort of deal, combined with this idea of cross picking. Man, it's really good for your playing. It really is. I'll drop a link to that underneath here too. So I'm gonna pause for a second. Do you guys have any questions? We're talking about actually my wife and I, but also like some of my friends on Facebook were talking about the fact that this was like the last normal weekend before everything shut down. And I have a picture from that last gig that I played, which was actually the next week. Let me see if I can find it here. This was the last time I was on a stage. Add a photo. Literally, there was, what is that, like 8 or maybe 10 people in the place. And then that was the 13th. And then after that, like, we haven't had a gig or anything. And it's kind of funny because we've watched guitar players. I had started this YouTube channel before, before the pandemic started. I actually started in December of 2019 to build it up for, just to build it up to do the guitar player YouTube thing. But then it seemed like everybody suddenly was doing live streams and videos because nobody had work. Now we're kind of getting to the point people are getting vaccinated and they're starting to reopen some things here in California. I'm kind of hoping that by summertime I'll be back out and playing. But it's funny because this always kind of comes back to the live performance thing for me. What drives or motivates what I'm going to practice or work on. And even though I don't have any gigs on the books now, what I do have is this idea that, like, hey, the stuff I'm working on right now will, when I come back, I don't want to be rusty. When I come back, I want to be better than when I left. So stuff like working on the bluegrass stuff, working on the funk stuff, working on the jazz stuff, it's all beneficial to me in the bigger picture. And I kind of have this clock ticking down, right? Because at a certain point, I'm going to have to kind of go back to the real world of working on tunes that I need to play, specific to those gigs. And then my fun practice time is going to be kind of over. But the process of doing like these live streams has been great. I play, several minutes at the beginning of each live stream. And some of that is just to kill time until people kind of show up. And then some of it is because it's the only opportunity I have to actually play or perform right now, and I really do miss that. And knowing that someone other than my dogs or my family are hearing me, kind of keeps me on my toes a little bit, which is kind of nice. I don't know. Anyway, what I want to get to is I want to be doing stuff that you guys want to watch and what you need to learn. So if you do me a favor, always when you have a question, make sure you put it in the comments. What I'm going to do for the next several of these live streams is stuff like this. I'm going to find fun stuff to talk about. I did kind of my fretboard and theory knowledge lessons. I've done a lot of them, and I'm kind of at the point where I don't necessarily know if you guys need any more of that. I'm going to do some practical stuff and kind of talk about some of the developmental stuff that'll kind of help you along. But I also, want to do some fun stuff too. So if you guys have like requests, I had one person ask to do some Freddie King. So I think we're going to do the solo to Going Down here pretty soon. That'll be like a pre-recorded lesson. That won't be a live stream. But I'm looking for stuff to talk about that you guys are interested in hearing. So we'll kind of go with that. So we talked a little bit about the funky stuff. We did a little bit of bluegrass. We did a little bit of blues. Let me give you guys a wacky scale. Let me see if my iPad is charged enough to... Wow, it looks like my iPad is dying a slow death. That's not cool. All right, so I'm going to give you guys a scale to play. I'm going to call it out kind of slowly. We're going to do this over the C minor chord. We have an altered dominant scale. This altered dominant scale, it's a mode of the melodic minor scale. And if you start on a certain note, on the 7th note, you actually get all of the altered notes against a 7th chord. We're not going to worry about that too much. We're just talking about the fact that it's a pretty cool tool if you're playing in a minor, like I'm playing in C minor. All right, then I can also play this G altered dominant scale, and it kind of takes me away in a way that actually creates tension and drives me back to the C. All right. So let me give you the scale first. I'm gonna call it out since I don't have it here. I've got 10th fret, which is G on the 5th string. We're gonna start here. 11th fret on the 5th string. 8th fret and then 9th fret on the 4th string, and then 11th, and then 8 and 10 on the 3rd string, and then 8, 9, 11, and 12. I'm just going to give you that much of it. Right, and it's cool because it just wants to resolve there. Right, so hey Mark, I'll be back to that idea, your question, in just a second. I'm gonna, if you can take that scale, and normally I would write it out for you. Just get my C minor vamp here. All right. So I can play. All right, that's all, you know, that's stuff you know, but all right, you can play that, and it's a really cool way to actually create tension. So you switch between the two sounds. Return you back to the C. Kind of cool with like a kind of fusion-y sounding, right? But I can just play up the scale. And that gives me this ability to play stuff that, like, it sounds kind of more sophisticated, but always has a way to resolve back to the key you're playing in over the one chord. That sound to me, and maybe that should be a lesson. I think we'll do like a pre-recorded lesson on that one, especially when I can actually do the graphics for you guys. But if you take that scale, and I'll play it kind of slow here, just to show you one more time, just in this position. There's a couple ways of doing this. I think as long as I got the, well, alright, so I'm here. That's the G, or the 10th fret. 11, and then 8, 9, 11 on the 4th string. 8 and 10 on the 3rd string, and then 8, 9, 11, 12. C minor. I just went from the 8th fret on the 4th string up to there, up to the A flat, and then back down. Starting on the 12th fret. Let's see. And then resolve to the C right there. Alright, I don't know, that kind of thing, it's fun because it gives you something that you can utilize over a C minor if you get tired of playing the C minor. Pushes you away from a little bit. Yeah, it's a fun scale. So we'll do, I'll put that on my list of things to talk about, but I'll do that as a pre-recorded lesson, and we'll cover it. That's the idea in a more complete video live stream kind of deal. So Mark, you were saying those small pieces of chords up the neck. Are you talking about just the triad shapes? Like where I was, like that sort of thing? Give me a second. not wanting to be my friend. Alright. A lot of those are covered by the triad lesson, the video lesson I did. Basically, the idea is that you should learn how to harmonize any of the diatonic scales, right? So we've talked about this in the past where you can take like a major scale, all right, and then you know that you can play the triads off of each of those notes in that scale. And then once you've got that kind of under your fingers, then you can start moving those ideas around. But it really helps to write some solos out or some ideas out. I can't tell you how many times I've learned something, thought I could use it on a gig, and then realized I really didn't know anything to do with that idea. Like I have it in my head, but I couldn't hear anything because I didn't sit down and kind of precondition my hands. So, you know, if you take an idea, and you can always also go back through this lesson and just watch it in bits too, like some of those ideas that I did. But the triad lessons in the caged pattern, or the cage system stuff, let me find those real quick. Okay, so do me a favor, I'll give you 2 videos to check out.
You have a root.
Stop. Okay, so you've looked at the original cage system lesson, right? We're talking about. So in this playlist, if you look at that playlist and open it up, the first video is the cage system thing, which we talk about basically how to extract your triads out of the scales. But then, if you look at the second and third videos, what we talk about is the idea that we can play those going up in string sets, and that's actually the useful thing for here, because like I know here's G, I also know G, 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 and how they replicate all over the fretboard. So if I've got a song that goes, you know, G, C, D, I can also go, you know, G, C, D, G, C, D, G, C, D. I can play it in many, you know, on any of those string sets. G, C, D, G, C, D. Man, my brain is just, you know, not G, C, D. I can do it in really wide things. I can go G, C, and then what happened? That's right. Yeah, my brain's not working. Right. That's a bit from the Eric Johnson thing. But if you check those out, and then kind of come back to some of the ideas that we talked about in this lesson, I think it'll be it'll make this stuff a little bit easier to understand or grasp. So, and then once you've done that, say, hey, you know what? I can do these things. How can I utilize them a little bit better? and we'll work through that, because that'll probably be better for you, because then you'll learn how this stuff works as a system, as opposed to me showing you a few things by rote. That was always the thing when I was in college the first time. I had this really great guitar teacher, and I totally underutilized him because I wanted him just to show me licks and ideas. And he's like, no, you know, learn this theory and then listen to a bunch of music, and then try and, you know, have that stuff make sense. And it would have been nice if he'd bridged the gap a little bit. But the reality was, he knew that if he just gave me licks, specific licks like that, chances are that would just be what I would focus on, is playing those licks and never really actually exploring how I can use that stuff melodically. So, kind of food for thought. All right. Any more questions? I might wrap it up a little bit earlier today. It's been about an hour, and my phone has been just going bonkers. So, all right, folks, I will talk to you on Wednesday. We'll probably talk more of this sort of thing. We'll talk about licks and ideas. If you have an artist that you like, suggest it in the comments below. And part of that is that I can kind of take a look at what they do and find something that I like to do out of that and show it to you. Also, please remember, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you like the content on the channel. I do these videos twice a week on Wednesday nights and Saturday mornings. They always stay up, so you can always watch them if you miss the live stream. But if you come to the live stream, you can ask questions, like Mark and Mike and Tom have this morning. And I love that, actually. That really helps me out. Give me a thumbs up on the video, please. All of that stuff helps, and tell your friends. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good morning, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Thanks a lot.